So the new season began for Newcastle Women away, and the game finished 2-0 to the home side. To lose 2-0 against Barnsley, who are one of the favourites for promotion from the Division 1 this year. But this is what the manager had to say shortly after the game.
Manager Langley said of the 2-0 defeat to Barnsley, "Of course we wanted to start the season with 3 points. We knew Barnsley would be a tough opponent, however, it's a good early lesson. The group are together, we will go away and work harder, build more and learn more as a group."
So after that opening day disappointment, but reason to be encouraged, Newcastle came back to the North East but didn't return home. Instead they visited their local neighbours from down the A19, Sunderland, and the game was actually transferred and moved to the Stadium of Light at short notice and attracted 1,200 people. Newcastle took the lead. Fantastic scenes, fantastic effort by the girls. It wasn't to be. The team went on and unfortunately lost 3-2. However, to take the lead and to draw level in the game against opposition from a much higher rung on the football ladder was really commendable. Fantastic effort, great memories, great effort, and I also remember on the day that the Newcastle keeper pulled off a string of absolute worldies to frustrate those inside of the Stadium of Light. But it wasn't to be, and Newcastle went out of the cup 3-2, a very, very, very valiant effort by the ladies down there, and returned to action shortly afterwards for the first home game of the season at Druid Park against Chorley. And we actually won this game 1-0. Their keeper, where we had a bit of we had played a bit of a blinder at the Stadium of Light. Their keeper, I remember making at least 3 good saves in this game. It gave Becky Langley a first taste of actual victory, 3 points at Druid Park, and it was a fantastic way to round out the first proper month of August in charge of Newcastle United Women. So after that mixed bag of a first month, Newcastle's women team went into the second month under the new regime, looking to bounce back and to get a few wins just to cement their position in the middle of the table. It didn't start out at all well. In a game that I think we were all quite confident of getting something out of, Newcastle were absolutely annihilated, 6-1 against Durham, and the only highlight of that game was an absolute brilliant wonder goal from Maxwell. But apart from that one ever so brief highlight, it was a day to forget for Newcastle United Women. And to be fair, the month just went on from there. We followed that up, and you'll remember that myself, Lee and Kyle were at this match against Liverpool Feds, and Newcastle went down 4-0 in that one, so conceding 10 goals in 2 games. And to be fair, as soon as they got their noses ahead, they looked an absolute cut above and were well deserved winners. So at this stage of the season, with just that solitary win against Chorley, things were looking quite bad for Newcastle United women's team, which sort of mirrored the men's team at the same point, to be fair. But then they travelled down to West Yorkshire to play Leeds, and you know, at the end of the day, that game, although we lost 1-0, you could not fault a single player's effort, determination. They hit the woodwork 4 times in a game. So unlucky not to get something out of that match, not to stop the rot, but unfortunately it meant that we went the entire month without a result. But the result aside, performance-wise, it was a lot more encouraging against Leeds. And Becky Langley came and spoke to the media and was still confident in her capabilities of herself and the team to turn the situation round as we head into the next month. So after the match, and after just had settled for the 4-0 defeat against Liverpool, myself, Lee and Kyle all discussed what we felt was needed to push the women's game at Newcastle United onto the next level, from facilities to finance to infrastructure to coaching. I do think that we should take the initiative of other clubs like your Manchester Cities, like your Chelseas, like your Arsenals, and more fully incorporate our women's team into the rest of the club. At the end of the day, they wear our colours, they represent our great club, so why shouldn't they be able to use what is there? We have got facilities there, and you know, at the time that we played Liverpool, for example, the stadium at St James's Park had not been used. Why couldn't they have used this game? And I know it comes down to money. Now, one of the things that we were really impressed with whilst at the game at Druid Park is the ability to communicate with the players, the interaction, the family friendly feel. The facilities there are really, really good, the free car parking, it was all absolutely fantastic. And we were also really impressed with quite a few of the Newcastle United women's team. The likes of Brooke Cochrane was literally fantastic, and we all left the game thinking she was actually the best right back, not only in the team or the teams that we saw play that day, but throughout our club. Fantastic, getting up and down, getting crosses in, getting tackles in, organisation, speaking, communicating, being a real leader on the pitch. So he's a bit more about our club captain. So into a new month, and Newcastle still really searching for any sort of winning formula, go to Bolton, and in absolutely awful conditions actually managed to get the 2-1 win down there with an absolute screamer of a free kick. Newcastle into the next round of the Cup, and we were all hoping at this point that this would be the catalyst to go on a little bit of a run when they return to action back in the league against Chester Street. But it wasn't to be. Unfortunately, Newcastle women lost that game 3-2, and a good one it was. Newcastle raced into a 2-0 lead at one point, but in 7 minutes they conceded 3 goals, totally spun the game on the head, and they were still just stuck on that solitary 1 win. And as I say, questions were starting to be asked at that time. But next game was back to cup action and Loughborough, and in absolutely appalling conditions, and in the space of 1 week we got the second cup win. And yeah, 2-1, fantastic result, and everybody at this point was then for hoping that we'd be able to turn the cup form into league form and start getting a few wins and push Newcastle up the table. But before they could do that, there was a little matter of one more cup competition game before the month went out, and unfortunately Chester Street once again had too much for us to handle, and again we went down to a 3-1 defeat, and that rounded off the month of October. So November came, and up came a visit back to Bolton for the second trip of the season, and it was another back to the wall performance for Newcastle women. 2-0 with the second goal coming from the penalty spot and Beth Gardner. That win took Newcastle up to the dizzy heights of 9th in the table at the beginning of November. Following that up, and an impressive November, was a 6-1 home win at Druid Park against Blakelaw, and that took Newcastle into the semi-final of the County Cup. And so it brought the end of November and our third trip to play Bolton this season. Unfortunately, it was third time lucky for Bolton, and they secured a 1-0 victory, which left Newcastle still languishing near the foot of the Division 1 North table. So with the winter break fast approaching, Newcastle finally turned the style on and demolished Stockport 4-0 at Druid Park. Now that was Anna Soulsby's first game back after a broken ankle. Fantastic. As I say, 4 different scorers on the day. Newcastle are running absolutely nab, and we went into the Christmas break in a very, very positive mood. Standout player for me for the season, and the player that I think myself, Kyle and Lee were most impressed with when we actually went to Druid Park to see the women's team play, was Brooke Cochrane. She is the club captain, and she has been sorely missed because she is actually injured at the moment, and I do think she's been a big miss since she's been injured. We actually said when we went there to Druid Park to see the game against Liverpool that she was actually by far the best right back at Newcastle. So yeah, fingers crossed Brooke is back really, really shortly. I think the team more than benefits when she's in there. Just a drive forward, a communication, a passing, a creating chances is absolutely fantastic. Obviously Newcastle enjoyed the break, came back, and recently away from home against Norton drew 1-1, and that leaves us currently 8th in the table. And well, I'll bring the table up now, and you can see there's a real chance still in the remaining matches between now and March when the season ends to finish, hopefully, let's hope, around the 5th place. I think it's achievable. I think it's possible. I know myself, Lee, Kyle and the rest of the team, we're really, really keen to go back. We'll be doing more with the women's team, and also we'll be inviting them onto the Black and White show on Nova Radio. So yeah, look forward, stay tuned for more on the women's team as we move forward. Take care and keep it tuned.
I hate this channel.